It's Radio Skid Row 88.9, and it's me, E-double-D-I to the E, Eddie, and it's the Good Smoke. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Remember that number, 9550-9552, also radioskidrow.org. Excuse me, today I have a bit of a fever, so, I'm just having the sweats all night and all that sort of stuff. Also,
but you're hanging in there.
Hanging in there. You heard the guest today, hanging in there. I'm going to introduce him in a sec. Also, goodsmoke.com.au, and 9550-9552 to call in if you want to speak to the guest. I'd rather you guys speak when I start playing the music, so then we don't interrupt the guest while he's having his interview. I'm also filming this, so we'll have it up on our Facebook and our YouTube soon. So today's guest is a scientist, politician, and also one of the leaders of the political party is called Pirate Party Australia. So today we have John August in the building. What's up, John?
Oh, it's all good, Eddie. Yep.
Yeah.
Keeping in the politics, keeping on radio. You
Yeah.
also see me sometimes on Speaker's Corner in the Domain as well.
Yeah. We've had John here a few times from our old show, but since we started, we thought, how about we bring him in and share his specialties and his expertise and all the facets of his life that he has. He's very interesting, gentleman. He's into poetry as well, and he also got a song request for me just as we started, so I'll be playing that as we get to our break. So today we're going to be speaking to John about what he's going through with the political parties and stuff like that, and just in general what's going on in Sydney. He's been listening into our show, so he thought it was very interesting, some of the topics that we bring up. We don't agree with everything with each other, but with discussion comes good ideas and breakthroughs, and maybe something that we can invent to start to have better living where we are. So John, you're into politics. How do you get into politics?
Well, gosh, I guess I've been involved for ages, but one of the things, I suppose a lot of us are frustrated with the way the world is and the way people talk about things and so on, and it's just been like for 10 or 15 years, you look at things, look at what people are saying and say, you're talking nonsense, you're missing the real point, that's not what's actually important, or you're just speaking from vested interest, and that just feels like, things should be different, things could be talked about differently. And, let's say some people go into politics because I guess they want to make the world a better place in a broader sense. But, for some people, I guess like myself, you're frustrated with something going on. And you say, this isn't right. We've got to do something about this. Or at least if we can't do anything about it, at least we can put a spotlight on how people are being, distorting things and being hypocritical. And that's sort of one of the things that drove me into politics. And I suppose, look, I guess there's a certain degree of envy where you look at the political commentators and see other people taken seriously and thinking, hang on, why aren't I taken seriously?
Yeah. And who the hell are these guys?
Yeah. But, let's say, you operate you do what you can, you operate at the level where you're at. Obviously, I'm not a big note, public celebrity or what was a public figure. I'm not really a big note public figure, but, I do what I can. And in terms of how I used to be frustrated 10 or 15 years ago, I'd like to think I've got a bit of a platform. I'm talking about things and, and let's say there is a bit of ego there and it's nice to be in that position. But equally, I don't want to try to be a big note politician or someone who's really famous. I just want to have a little bit of traction and do what I can.
Yeah. But you are a figure here at Radio Skid Row, though. You run a little bit of a show here at
Yeah, that's right. Tuesdays from noon till 2 p.m. It's the Roving Spotlight Show. So, I've got a few regular listeners who, there's Andrew Rawlings in Melbourne.
Shout
and you
out to
often get
Andrew.
him sort of making some comments on Facebook, which I sometimes read out. And I've also got Mr. Bashful. He's one of the speakers at Speaker's Corner.
Yeah.
And he's hosted the show a few times, but often he sort of phones in and makes a comment, sometimes on air and sometimes he just makes a comment. So, there's a decent number of people listening if you check out on the internet, so that's good anyway.
So what started first? Was it the politics or the radio?
Politics started first. If you go back before the Pirate Party, I was involved in the Secular Party, right, which is sort of challenging the whole of religion has on society. And, I do believe that religion's got a very unhealthy hold on our society, but I guess the Pirate Party is about more than that, but it certainly includes that. And the Secular Party, that's sort of its strong focus, but, I think the Pirate Party's a bit more lively and innovative, I suppose.
Yeah.
But even before the the secular party way back when I was involved in the Abolish State Governments Party, because I thought these states are getting in the way.
Yeah.
And, I still think that, but I suppose the world is a tortuous one with lots of vested interests and lots of people trying to distort things to their own ends. And, I guess state governments is one of them, and, it is the old thing of, why can't we all get along? Why have we got these state governments in the way?
Yeah.
And, so that goes back a very long time before I got involved in radio. But, the particular thing with this radio show, I originally got involved with Shard Core, and they had a panel at the Marrickville Street Fair talking about UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
So you actually had Ian Bryce, who's very strongly anti-UFO, and me, who's somewhat in the middle. I sort of say, who knows, maybe we are being visited by UFOs, but the knowledge is not something you can do anything with. Nobody's actually got any sort of technological inspirations from UFOs that we've actually managed to have insights into the world that we would not have otherwise had. And I don't think there's been any alien literature which we can both say is both compelling and interesting, but also very much recognisably different to what we have. So we haven't had any scientific advances or literary rewards coming from UFOs. From them, that's sort of my position there. But the point is that was the UFO panel at the Marrickville Street Fair, and I also found out about the then Workers' Radio program on Radio Skid Row, and that was sort of my path in. And I mean, the Workers' Radio program, I don't know how many people remember it, but it was a vibrant thing in its time.
Back in the day, okay. So when did you start here, radio? What year was it?
Gosh, I think I've been vaguely speaking, probably hanging around this radio station for probably about 6 or 8 years or something. Yeah. Had my own show for like 3 years or something.
Nice.
But going back before Radio Skid Row, I was a bit involved in 2SER, which is that station hanging off the University of Technology.
Yeah.
But much as it's been challenging to get my own spot on Radio Skid Row, it was even harder on 2SER.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, like, most of the guests that come in, I try to, like, probe them and try to find out more personally and more about their personal life and see where they come from, how they got to this point. So, did you grow up in Sydney? Are you from this area, or did you come to Sydney? Like, where did you start off?
I think I was born in Wollongong and spent a decent amount of time in Wollongong in my early life, but I have no memories of Wollongong.
Really?
My earliest memories are of Sydney. So my family moved to Sydney at a very early age, and I've sort of basically been here in Sydney for as long as I can remember. Really.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into the politics now. Pirate Party. The first thing that comes to my head, like, are you guys from the Pirates of the Caribbean? Like, what do you mean? What's meant by the Pirate Party Australia? How do you get that name? Well,
the Pirate Party, it goes back to, I guess, copyright and freedom on the internet.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right, and that's the main thing. Because, I mean, dare I say it, be it wogs, gay, queer,
Ooh,
all those.
So those
No, but the point is, originally they were sort of terms of derision, but they were adopted by those people and exactly. Had badges of honour, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, with when people were copying programs and copying music, you had the corporations declaring them to be pirates.
Ah, okay.
And, that's sort of where the term pirate came from. But it's about freedom, personal freedom, freedom of creativity, freedom to copy, freedom from, like, excessive corporate influence. Just to go off on a bit of a tangent here, sometimes I tell this story. There was the US film, I think, Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah.
And, there's the saying that no Hollywood film has ever made a profit, right? And Forrest Gump basically didn't make a profit. And, oh dear, you got some issues with
it. That's all right.
Well, never mind. Anyway, Forrest Gump, the thing is, there's a saying that no Hollywood film has ever made a profit because of the way they do their accounts. And one of the things, they went to the author of the book and said, the last film did all right, we want to make a sequel. And he said, look, why do you want to make another film if the first film didn't make a profit?
Yeah.
And the thing is, in one sense, it didn't make a profit on paper using Hollywood accounting.
Ah, okay.
But obviously, behind the scenes, it did make a profit.
Ah, okay.
And the thing is that these Hollywood films, companies, have no problems with diddling their creative partners, the actors or the authors who have some sort of proportion of profit. And then they arrange things so the film doesn't make a profit, so they diddle their creative partners. And then they resent people who pirate their stuff. And I think, hang on, that's very hypocritical. If you're going to cast moral aspersions on people, then you should
follow it yourself.
You should look at yourself first. You should keep your nose clean. That's one example, but there's just so many abuses of copyright and intellectual property. I mean, for a lot of people, maybe copyright's a bit dull, but, in the US, there's the patent trolls, people who buy patents just so they can sue each other.
Yeah.
Now, I have no problem if you've got a patent and you're actually making something
exactly.
that you're selling and people are buying it and people find it useful and you've put effort into figuring out how to make this thing.
Right, yeah.
That's legitimate. That's cool. That's good. But when patents are bought and sold and they're just this war chest and you just rove around looking for legal cases where you can pounce on people and intimidate them, that's not what patents should be about.
Yeah. All right, John, let's hold on to that. I'm going to put your song on that you requested. I had a bit of technical difficulties with the camera. I'm going to sort that out. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We got this one. What was this song that you gave me? What was it called?
This is Pretty Little Head by Eliza Rickman. So it's just a quick, it's an earthly rhyme that went a bit wrong.
Oh, okay, beautiful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Radio Skid Row. You're listening to Good Smoke. It's Radio Skid Row 88.9, ladies and gentlemen. If you just tuned in, we've had a bit of technical difficulties, but as you can see, the crowd's going wild because we fixed it up. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Radio Skid Row. This is Good Smoke. If you just tuned in, we have a guest today by the name of John August. He's a politician, scientist, also poet, and he just loves creating stuff. And we're going to get into that speaker's corner and stuff like that, because that little thing over there that's happening in the city next to the art galleries, it's an awesome little jam that's happening over there, but we'll get into it later. We're talking about copywriting, people getting patents for patents. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, I don't think it matters too much.
I'll just want to try to announce it properly, but and then they're making profit off that, not even creating any
that's right, just buying and selling stuff and making profit out of just buying and selling the patents. So I mean, as I say, what I said is, pirate party policy, certainly I view, if you made something and you're actually making it and flogging it and so on, and you want a patent to protect you, that's fair enough. But what it is, a lot of firms have all these patents for all these things that they'll never make because they want to stop other people from making it, and they just make one of those things themselves.
Yeah.
Right, and it's like it's just like this sort of game of chess, or them firing missiles at each other or something like that. But patents are not legitimately used to protect things that are being made and things that are being sold.
Okay. And
there's a whole thing of patent trolls in the US, and then there's a thing about patents on software. And it's just getting it's getting crazy. You've got the patents on pharmaceuticals, and then what they do is they try to fiddle the pharmaceutical patent a little bit and keep the thing in patent, and then so the old use of the pharmaceutical drops out of patent. But if you try to do that, then they still basically legally threaten you. It's just a whole dog's breakfast. It really is.
Yeah, big mess. So it's one thing to have a patent on protecting your own product that you are making.
Yeah.
In case of like someone copying it or making profit off your own patent, but another thing is, and then it's another thing to make profit to hold someone back from growing or inventing.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing that on paper your patents are about promoting innovation.
Yeah.
But the whole thing of copyright, it's meant to be an exchange where you're given an incentive to innovate. It's not like you're given the license to lock things up and block people out just because you can or you want to. Because the whole thing about copyright, it's called the Mickey Mouse Act, the death of the author plus 70 years. And that just kept getting extended and extended because the US government wanted to keep Disney and Mickey Mouse in copyright.
So the rule is when the author dies, 70 years?
Yeah. It used to be plus 20 years, but basically my understanding is because of US lobbying to try to keep Mickey Mouse in copyright, they kept extending it and extending it. And the thing is, if you got something in copyright, it's like you have a monopoly and then it gets returned to the common pool, to the general public for them to be creative with. That's the exchange.
Okay.
And the idea that basically Walt Disney all those years ago decided to make stuff because 70 years after he's died, his estate would still be making money. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean, the idea of all these things, basically, whether be it patents or copyright, it's not like you're entitled to that. It's more an exchange. It's to give you a reason to produce stuff for the benefit of us all. And so we're sort of bribing you with a bit of cash along the way, but we shouldn't bribe you with more than you need, and we shouldn't give you your estate this ongoing right to sort of just turn on the tap and make money forevermore. And that's just plain wrong, because as I say, I don't believe there's an inherent right to the products of your creation. You're granted a monopoly as an exchange. It's a deal you make with society.
So it sounds like you're going into like the dark side of the moon, because in that sort of arena, you got people that have big money that can make big influence on politics, and that's how they can keep the rules in. So you better watch out, John, in case.
Well, the thing is, at least in the US, there have been people who've drawn the line in the sand. They wanted to get the copyright extended by another 10 years, and that failed because the anti-copyright lobby actually got sufficiently strong in the US to stop it from happening. But really, until that point, this is where laws are the result of the lobbying by corporates who want to make profit, not by any sensible judgment about this is what's best for society overall.
Like fairly,
And that's one of the things, I guess, about politics, government, whatever. A lot of the time, the laws are set on behalf of the people who'll make money, not behalf of some view of like, this is what's best for society, this is what's best for people overall. It's sort of like, vested interest, lobbyists, that sort of thing. And, the cynical comment about the US is it's the best democracy money can buy.
Exactly,
and I don't think we're quite so bad in Australia, but even in Australia, you have the thing of people resigning as being ministers of government and then going into highly paid consultancies for private firms, and that you sort of have this feeling this is an exchange for the favours that you did while you're in government. It's the revolving door for lobbyists.
You got me there, and now it's my turn to pay. Fix you up.
And like there's a moderate number. I mean, even if you want to say these people are just propagandists, but there's stories of people becoming ministers, resigning from government, becoming part of this paid up think tank. And they don't make any media releases. They don't write any papers. I mean, obviously the papers might well be a distortion or whatever, but, they don't even go through the motions of being a propaganda mouthpiece. They just sit on this think tank and don't do anything.
Just keep circling around on the same thing. So, like, even with this, the stuff with YouTube that's happening, and just stuff on the internet about copyright, what's your thoughts about that, about how people are getting kicked off and not allowed to come back on and stuff like that?
Well, this is one of the things about censorship, and I guess it is a difficult thing. I suppose I am someone who tends to say, look, we should have no censorship, but if people advocate violence, then you should put a lid on that.
For sure.
But the thing that's happening lately is it used to be that governments would be the people who'd censor things, that would control things. Now, the other point of that is, like, there's anti-hate speech. There's also defamation and litigation if you sort of offend someone. But now you've got these corporate platforms who will censor people and say, no, you can't do that. And it is a difficult situation. I suppose I can only say it's one thing that I'm still working through. But what I would say is I think that there's a problem when speech gets corporatized. Because let's say if you've got some obnoxious guy mouthing off at the pub or the cafe, that's just one person. We shouldn't really shut them up. But if they've got a megaphone, if they've got a business around themselves, if they've got a business around being offensive, I think that's a different category to just being offensive. Because I suppose when you talk about shock jocks, they're not just your average guy mouthing off at the local cafe or the bar. There's this shock jock on radio with a whole bunch of research staff, a whole lot of legal infrastructure behind him, so that he can say offensive stuff and be well-resourced to say offensive stuff. And that's when, because my ideal of freedom of speech is, here is an individual that has views. They should be able to express those views. They shouldn't be shut up. And I still believe that. But when you get people who have ridiculously large megaphones, they're not just your average go talking. They're someone with a whole lot of economic resources behind them. They're not speaking out as an individual. They're speaking out as a corporate entity. And I think that's where we get into a difference between individuals speaking out, which I would never want to stop, but people who make money from saying offensive things. So I guess that's a fundamental distinction. If you want to say offensive things, I don't want to shut you up. But if you're making money saying offensive things, I think that's a much more complicated situation.
And what if you're making money off shutting those people up as well? You know what I mean? Like, for example, like... Go, Kevin.
Okay, I think the compromise with YouTube, not that they've gone down this path, is to say you can speak out, but you won't make any money doing it.
Yeah.
Then people complain, I used to have a revenue stream from YouTube and they suddenly cut me off, and then they whinge about that.
Yeah.
But at least YouTube wouldn't be stopping them from speaking out. It would just be stopping them from speaking
Making
out
money.
in a corporate sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's I've just made up that idea just on the spot. Talking to me, look, this is just ideas in flow. It's not particularly Pirate Party policy.
Yeah.
Pirate Party policy is to be against censorship pretty much
All the
across the
time,
board.
yeah.
The only exceptions are like, if you're advocating violence to someone, okay, fair enough, maybe we should shut you down then. But I think that it's not, individuals should always have the right to freedom of speech, but if you've got money behind you, then that's abusing the market. That's not free speech, that's market abuse.
Like an unfair advantage sort of thing.
Yeah, unfair advantage.
Because a millionaire, if he had his thoughts, he can just wipe out everyone off the net if he could.
Yeah, that's right. If you got money, you can convert the money to power.
Power, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So like with the YouTube and stuff like that, if there was no like corporate interest with advertising with YouTube, would this still be a problem? Or is it just because it could affect the money?
Well, the thing about YouTube is a corporation. It's a business to make money. Now, if we imagined, like, this isn't what YouTube is, but if we imagined something like YouTube, which was a not-for-profit cooperative that ran off certain principles, then you'd be a lot purer because you wouldn't be tainted by business practice. It would be merely a platform to provide people opportunities.
All the type of views there.
Yeah, and there are some corporations in the US who are trying to move back. Yes, they're a corporation, but they're trying to be, in a sense, less corporate than YouTube, I suppose. But at the extreme, you go from a corporation to a cooperative or that sort of thing. And that would be, you'd have fewer ethical problems with a cooperative that's providing a platform. Yeah. But in a sense, this is what's happening when you have a business that runs a platform, a business that gets to decide who can speak out, who can't, a business that gets to decide who makes money and who doesn't make money from what they do.
Well, I suppose there's rules on this site anyway. So like, if you're breaking those rules and it's a private company, like there's.
Oh yeah, well that is one of the things. If you participate in YouTube,
Yeah.
in a sense you have an implicit contract with YouTube,
That's right, yeah.
and in a sense if you violate the terms of that contract, well, YouTube can make whatever action they like.
Yeah.
Now, at another level, we can say, well, hang on, are YouTube imposing fair conditions?
Yeah.
And the problem is there's just so many decisions made all the time, and it's a grey area.
That's
and
right, yeah.
Things evolve and things are interpreted, so it just becomes a dog's breakfast. And
Exactly. And then the law can be like blurred as well. Like all their policies could be blurred, and it could be read any other way. Like the person that's kicking them off could have a personal vendetta on someone.
And the other thing I've also noticed, this is not just YouTube, but all over the place.
Yeah.
But basically, all over the place, you whinge about something that's wrong and you get ignored. But if there's dollars involved, like if one of the big shock jocks gets on your case, then the problem gets fixed up quick smart.
Yeah.
Right? So, the problem is it's like a bit sad when if there's dollars behind the issue that you're bringing up, they'll pay attention to you. But if it's just plain wrong, they'll ignore you. It's ugly,
Yeah, for sure. Well, with this with the Pirate Party, what are you guys are trying to advocate, and how are you going to what policies do you have to stop these things getting out of hand?
Well, I suppose the Pirate Party starts off with the principle that we should have freedom of speech and that we shouldn't arbitrarily shut down offensive speech, even speech that is offensive. And I do go along with the Pirate Party principles a lot of the way. I'm willing to change things a bit when you say this is not an individual speaking out, this is a corporate entity speaking out, or particularly people who are making money out of being offensive. I think it's all right for an individual to be offensive. I think it's wrong to make money out of being offensive. Okay. That's the distinction I would make. But I suppose, I guess you got me on the spot a bit, but let's just say official Pirate Party policy is to push back from any form of censorship apart from advocacy of violence. Though maybe once things get a bit too hot, you should somehow try to de-escalate. Because, I mean, in the abstract, I don't want to shut people up, but if you go onto the internet, you have just so many obnoxious trolls out there that, the idea that an obnoxious troll, if you shut up an obnoxious troll, you're limiting their freedom of speech. I just say, hang on, look, there's something wrong with this picture. This is not someone who's, I guess, participating on a public platform on a level that we couldn't call reasonable. Even if they've got offensive viewpoints, a lot of people, they don't just have offensive viewpoints. They are offensive in how they conduct themselves.
Yeah,
right. So as I say, I think you can say offensive things as long as you're not offensive in how you conduct yourself. And the problem is a lot of the internet, you basically have these trolls, you have these obnoxious people who are running around deliberately putting people down, deliberately trying to get a rise out of people. And to say that those people hide behind freedom of speech, even if you don't silence them, you should at least point out and say, "Come on, you're a bunch of dills," and your justification really is quite ridiculous. So that's the other side of it. That the internet is not people wanting to express themselves or being frustrated in their ability to express themselves. There's a lot of people who are deliberately obnoxious trolls who aren't trying to participate in discussion. They're just trying to jam people and shut people down. Because, that there's this sort of saying that, the left is trying to deplatform people. I mean, the right has its trolls trying to jam people and shut them down in their own way.
Okay. So for me, I just try to think about this, like, how did we get here? Because we've come from harsh, say, let's just say we believe in evolution, whatever. We've come from harsh survivals to coming to this point where we offended by just words and people's ideas. Do you think it's the responsibility of the corporations to try to shun those people out, or is it up to the people to educate themselves to know what's true and what's not?
Well, I think that the second case is people should be sort of educating themselves on what's true and what's not. But there is the old expression, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And look, on the one hand, there are obnoxious trolls out there. We want to somehow limit the obnoxious trolls, but at the same time, we should all be more resilient.
Exactly.
We should all be able to stand. Let's say, more thick skin. Though I have to say, if there's so many oppressed groups in society and they're being picked on by an obnoxious shock jock, there's something very wrong with this picture.
For sure, yeah.
If you don't have oppressed groups in that way, they just happen to be groups, but they're reasonably financially independent, they're reasonably secure, they can stand tall and they can stand proud, and then a shock jock is having a go at them. Well, big deal. Right, but that's not the world we live in. Yeah. There's oppressed groups that are also being picked on by the shock jocks. And I think that's the combination that's the problem. But, I mean, there's two sides to it. Yes, it's bad that these shock jocks are ripping in, but we should all be more resilient and stand tall and proud ourselves as well. Yeah. There's both sides to it. Yeah,
there's an Arabic proverb. It says, lower your voice and strengthen your argument, sort of thing. Yeah. It sounds more meaningful when you say it in Arabic, but strengthen your argument, know the truth. And as I said, the whole saying, and the truth may set you free, So.
Well, the other side where I obviously I'm not impressed with the obnoxious right-wing trolls, but broadly speaking, a lot of people have run out of the thing of saying, you're wrong, I think you're wrong, but hey, that's the way it is. Here's why I think you're wrong. And just express it politely and firmly without personally attacking the other person. Yeah. And I think both sides of politics chuck rocks at the other side. And both sides of politics are trying to inappropriately shut down the other person. Like, let's just say I don't believe with the global change denialists. I don't believe with the people who have a certain racist tone in the way that they relate to immigration. But I don't say that they shouldn't say anything.
Speak up,
that they shouldn't say anything at all. Yeah. I don't say that, you're wrong, so you shouldn't say anything. I try to steer away from that line of thought. And there you could say I'm very strongly with the pirates who believe in free speech, that we shouldn't be running around trying to shut other people down. We might want to disagree with them vigorously. And the problem is that sometimes people who we disagree with have got a lot of dollars behind them. So they're not participating in the argument. Like at the one end of the extreme, you got someone in the street corner who's just standing on a milk crate and mouthing off. And I don't think anyone should ever be stopped from doing that. But if you're a millionaire and you buy ads in the paper or you do this or do that, that is poles apart from the guy standing on the milk crate at the corner. And I endorse the guy standing on the milk crate at the street corner. But I have worries when you've got dollars and you're not just speaking out as an individual. You've crossed a dividing line and you're doing something else.
So it was happening before the internet, like with propaganda with big
Oh, yes,
you know
yes.
what I mean? So now it's just manifested into the internet now, you know, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, people talk about fake news and this sort
Yeah.
of thing. And look, I tell you, before the internet and the way we understand it today, we had propaganda, we had PR, we had marketing.
Exactly, that's right.
Right? And I think it was Goebbels, who was one of Hitler's henchmen, who sort of developed a lot of principles of propaganda.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when you talk about clickbait, I mean, go back 10 or 20 years ago, the newspapers had these front pages to try to entice you and bring you in to buy the paper, or at least look at that paper and contemplate buying it. And now we've got clickbait. But before we had clickbait, we had, the headline on the front page. And if we want to say that some of those clickbait things are pretty poor taste or, sort of basically lowest common denominator stuff, those newspaper headlines on the front page were pretty bloody tasteless, and some poor family have had a few people murdered or something.
That's right.
And it becomes front page news, and they might play some sort of play with words about how someone's been killed or something like that. Yeah. And that's what they used to do 10 or 20 years ago. So
same thing.
There's been bad shit going on for the last few decades.
Or even if you go Roman times, even they have propaganda back then too. It's been around for a long time. So
yeah. Well, basically, fake news, the sort of distortions you get on the internet, that's not new. But what is sort of new is that people are organising themselves into, metaphorically, mobs on the internet.
Oh, okay.
Right? We used to have mobs. We used to have, I guess, lynch mobs that would run around and kill people.
Yeah.
And I think the lynch mob stopped, and then you had newspaper outlets, and there was a degree of civility in terms of how things happened. But on the internet, you got something that's much more like a mob.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Radio Skid Row. I'm going to go to a break and play some music, and we're going to come back and get straight into it. We're going to talk about some science, and we'll talk about some poetry. It's currently 6:58. I'm going to play this one. It's called True Story by I'll call him a jazz musician / he plays a trumpet as well. I love him. He's awesome. He plays out in France. His name's Ibrahim Malouf. This guy is awesome the way he plays the trumpet. His father actually invented a trumpet with an extra little, I don't know how to call them. It's a little presser things. There's three things they press down on the trumpet. Or he made an extra one on the side, and he just gets some amazing sound. So this one's called True Story by Ibrahim Malouf. It's Radio Skid Row 88.9, and you're listening to The Good Smoke. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Remember that number, 9550-9552. Also, radioskidrow.org. Follow the support links, and you can follow us on Facebook as well. By following the support links, you can donate some money and get some access to Toto bags, T-shirts, and all the competitions that happen here. So check out radioskidrow.org. Also, goodsmoke.com.au. If you just tuned in today, we're having a little bit of a chat about copyright patenting, and poetry, science, and today we're joined by John August. And if you do want to ask a question, remember, call that number up and be sure to ask that question. So, John.
Okay, well, Eddie, I guess, we were talking a bit about intellectual property, and I thought I'd give the sort of the big sweeping summary that I sometimes do, because a lot of laws, they're justified in terms of the individual. We're protecting the individual to go out and be creative. Yeah. And that's the cover story. But when it comes to intellectual property, most of the time, that's not what happens. Now, say with patents, right? You have this vision of the inventor in the back shed who's working on tinkering on something, comes up with this great discovery, and because they have a patent, they can go into the marketplace and sell it and make a profit. So the promise is we're enabling the individual. The reality is it's the big corporations who get the patents, and they play silly buggers with them. They have a whole bunch of patents sitting on the shelf that they never make stuff with, and they might just have one or two things that they actually make, and then you've got other people who are buying and selling patents, and all they're doing is running around basically taking legal cases against other people rather than protecting in a meaningful way something they're actually making. So the promise is the individual, and the reality is the corporations abusing it. And now let's say copyright in terms of music. One view is, you got this little band, and because of copyright, they've got their music and they can make it big and they can go places and so on. And really, for a moderate number of bands, I don't know how many, they sort of give away their money for free to promote themselves, and they sort of make their money from live gigs. And, basically this whole thing of flogging music just isn't a meaningful thing.
That's right, yeah.
And what happens is, it's not like copyright protects the individual bands who are trying to make a go of things. Basically, the bands are chewed up and spat out by the big record labels. It's the big record labels who control the market and the sales channels and this sort of thing. And as a result, part of that is that they also manipulate copyright, and they basically chew up and spit out the small guys, the small bands. And it's the very rare bands who actually get big enough to actually call the shots. No, there have been, I forget what his name, I think it might have been Frank Zappa, and he had his Barking Pumpkins label, and he actually said, right, I'm going to bypass the record labels, I'm going to put out my own music. And this is before the time of the internet, but he was trying to move away from that whole, the corporations control the way the music is distributed. So again, the promise is the individual band. The reality is this big corporate entity manipulates the availability of this creative content, this creative music. And now, and like drug companies, they basically play silly buggers with the drugs and evergreen things. And then the other side of things is that drug companies only want to get involved in cures for ongoing illnesses that need ongoing treatment with the drugs that they make. And basically, more to the point, the things that first world people can pay for. They're not interested in cures that don't involve ongoing money. They're not involved in cures for things in third world countries that people can't afford. I mean, the view of the Pirate Party myself is really you should farm out research grants to universities to come up with novel ideas, and then you get third-party corporations, basically chemical manufacturing firms, to make this stuff and flog it. Because I'm not talking about, state control of everything. I'm saying, look, there's some things private industry does well. You've got these individual, chemical production firms. You say, look, make this, and they go off and make it. And it works out all right.
Yeah.
But when you've got a pharmaceutical company that's got the patent sewn up, the marketing sewn up, their control of things sewn up, then that's not good. So I'm not saying, let's let the state control everything, but my vision is
balance.
My vision is for like an arm of the UN to be doling out grants to universities all around the world, and those universities come up with clever solutions, which are then implemented that way. And like there's like the UN World Health Organization. I mean, they got rid of smallpox in the world. I mean, that was a thing. They worked at it. They got rid of it. And basically, after you get rid of smallpox, you're out of a job. But what drug company would go down that path? Now, the other thing where there's a little bit of fairness in the system is to do with authors who make books, okay? And the book publishers normally have a moderately good relationship with a moderately number of authors. The authors are not screwed over by the book companies the same way as the bands are screwed over by the record labels. But I know that Stephen King once got the shits with publishers, and he sort of went down his own thing, and he wanted to, as it were, publish his own books. Yeah. So there's a bit of toing and froing there. But notice, the thing is, these laws, the promise of the laws is that they enable individuals. The reality is that the large corporate interests sort of take control of them, and then they become the plaything of the people with a lot of money rather than the individual people trying to create and make a go of things. So that's why, when it comes to promoting creativity, we really shouldn't have, big corporations being the conduits for creativity. We should have individuals creating stuff and hopefully, other people partaking of that. And I mean, maybe you go out to see bands. I know I go out to see bands, and there's some good pub bands in Sydney. Yeah. And they sit outside the big record labels, and they're good stuff, and they're entertaining and so on. And
for popular,
me, for me that works. For me, that's a thing.
For sure.
And I guess for a lot of other people, I know someone who seems to see either play in a band or see a band every week. For me, I get a bit fidgety if I don't see a live band for
really?
like six weeks. Yeah. But I know some people got it.
Something like that. Yeah, I love live bands, man. They're very I know there's another dimension on it when you're live with the artist and he or she is in front of you. The funny thing is now people say that it's easier than ever to represent your independent band if you're an indie band or if you're an indie artist, and you can just go on Facebook and you can go on SoundCloud. But the irony of it is all these things that they go into are big corporate companies controlling the indie market now.
Yeah, I think that's a bit rude. But the other thing is, look, if you hang around SoundCloud or even Facebook or whatever, it's amazing the number of unsolicited things they say. Oh, cough up some dollars and you'll get 1,000 genuine followers. I mean, how can they be genuine if you're paying dollars for them? You know, there's something wrong with this thing. But notice, you got the one level, which is like, in principle, you get popular and famous because you've got good stuff that you're putting out there and people pay attention with it and people run with it. But look at how much those platforms are abused. And, I mean, I don't know the real situation, but people try to artificially inflate the prominence of their tracks, and maybe they make use of these third-party, you know, snake oil merchants or whatever.
Yeah, that's not snake oil merchants.
But you know, that's telling you how the platform's been subverted to the extent that there are people running around trying to make these claims.
Yeah, that's right. Because I see artists from overseas, and maybe I'm oblivious to it, but there's some artists overseas that on some of the views that they're making on YouTube are in the hundreds or 10 million views or something like that. And I've never heard of the artists. They're never on MTV. I never see them on TV at all. It's like, how the hell did you get that
there's
many
these
followers?
really famous people you never heard of.
Never heard of. There was one Australian dude, and I don't know if he's famous, but he had on one video like 10 million views. I'm like, but I don't know you. How are you so big on here? It's like, are you actually organically getting these people, or is it just
the point is, do you actually know someone in your circle of friends that is aware of this person, or is at least one step removed? And you sort of wonder if it's sort of like, look, you don't want to be just sort of say, look, I'm important, I'm the only thing that matters. But you sort of say, how can you be so famous and important if I don't know you, none of my friends know you, and none of the people who know my friends know you? There's something wrong with this picture.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right. It's not like the 6 degrees of separation sort of thing where someone knows someone. Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, in Michael Jackson's day, say, back in those days when the King of Pop, how many followers he had, and it was realistic because you could see it on the TV, you could see it at his concerts. It's like now everyone's trying to be a Michael Jackson and trying to have that big fan base. I feel like the restriction back in the day for artists to make it through into the whole of artistry, like to get through that corridor, I feel like now everyone's got access to it and they don't know what to do with it.
Well, yeah, you're right. There used to be a corporate filter where the people behind the record firms would get to decide, who makes it.
Yeah.
And now you're just basically you're just out in the wilderness. So like it was sort of like before you were abused by the record companies. Now you're abused by the sheer chaotic, amorphous thing that's out there.
And the individual can almost have corporate how could I say, mentality without him even knowing it. Yeah. And he starts marketing himself and all that.
Well, that's right. I mean, on the one hand, look, I want to promote myself. I'd love to get better known.
Yeah.
But I do have my limits. Like there's these weird, like independent European publishing houses who say, we'll compile your stuff together and flog it on Amazon and you might get a proportion of the profits. And I've had people sort of email me out of the blue, like I get the people abusing SoundCloud.
Yeah.
And, one person said, Dr. August. And I emailed back saying, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a mister if you really want to call me that. Yeah. And then the next letter, they still included doctor in the title. I'm thinking, you're not really listening to me, are you,
So if you never had that moral compass or that sort of like principles in your life, you could just say, all right, I'll just go with it as doctor, and you could become important without you being a doctor, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, well, to me, it seemed more like they were manipulative or playing silly buggers or something. Yeah. So for me, it rang alarm bells because none of my public works, I claim the title of doctor. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, so none of them are there. And if they actually took the least bit of passing interest in what I have written, they'd figure out what my background is and the fact that I don't have a PhD. Yeah. But yet they still do that. And so...
Maybe just to make themselves look important, we interviewed a doctor or some sort of thing, you know what I mean?
But what I'm trying to say is, yes, there is a point that I was getting to here. I mean, while on the one hand it would be nice to be more famous, there's a certain part of me which says, I'll do what I can with the notoriety I have, and I won't abuse the platform. I won't overreach. Like, in a sense, if I were on SoundCloud, would I hire these sort of third parties to try to amp up my my notoriety. And for me, that would seem so false. Basically, not that I have a band, but I do a little bit of spoken word performance in various pubs and venues. And sometimes I do seem to connect with people. And I say, look, this is not hundreds of people or thousands of people. It's 30 or 40 people in this pub, but it's still good.
That's exactly right.
It's still satisfying.
Exactly.
And in a sense, you do what you do with what you have and feel satisfied with the level of connection you're making.
That's what we were saying here with me and Brenna when we were brainstorming this whole idea for the show and how to what is the drive for it. And it's like, it doesn't matter if we have 2 people listening or 3,000 people listening. Like that one person that's listening, it could make a beneficial change in his life, So changing someone's life is more important than having a big fan base sort of thing. Yeah. And the point of it is just like, whoever we talk to, it's for someone's ears to hear, So someone in your circle, someone in my circle will hear this interview and they'll start listening to it. It doesn't matter, it has to be 3,000 people or anything like that. It's not what you're in it for. So the purpose of what I'm trying to, why internet can be dangerous or internet can be very good. It just depends how you use it, basically. Sitting here listening to you, I feel like the party is saying, don't abuse what you have. If you abuse it, you can sort of like make a mess of it all and shoot yourself in the foot. Like respect your right to speak, but don't abuse your right to speak to the point of where you shoot yourself in your foot. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like it will be hard for you guys to protect someone that's mouthing off all the time, and you know what I mean. So where do you draw the line with who you protect?
Well, I can only say I think that it behooves all of us to not be superficial in how we relate to the world, to go and see those live bands and enjoy those live bands because they're performing in front of us and they're worth seeing, not because they've got this big sort of following or this big status. We, as consumers, we should genuinely partake of other people's creativity rather than just want to follow famous people.
Yeah, no, that's right, man. And I feel like in Newtown and Stanmore and those little places that do have those little, live shows, you see them thriving. There's a little communities that come out, and it helps the other shops around that live band place as well, because you got like food places benefiting off people coming out, eating after the show.
Oh yeah, well, there's also different groups and different themes. There's what you might call the extended Detroit punk scene, and I go along to them and I just think, oh, what the heck, I'll go and see this band. And there's a few people I know who turn up and you at least nod to each other or shake hands or whatever, and that's really warm and uplifting. Yeah. And then there's other subgenres, I suppose. Let's just say goth, I suppose you'd say. I do go to the odd goth thing, and I take in the band and I think, oh, this is nice, but I'm not really connecting with the scene.
You're saying, yeah.
So it depends, I guess.
As a politician, just to go back to the politics, as a politician, obviously you have an opposition, but do you ever tend to see yourself like maybe sometimes you agree with some of the stuff they say, or is it all like, nah, we hate them, it's us against them sort of thing?
We haven't actually gone down this path, but it is something that we're developing in the Pirate Party, which is a view of bureaucracy and government waste. And I think if I can sort of speak on behalf of the Pirate Party, even though it's something that ideas that are still work in progress, government waste is a thing, but the Liberal Party talks about government waste and then basically has a lot of stupid initiatives that actually cost more money than they'll save.
Okay.
And so they talk about fixing government waste, but they're basically ideologically tainted. So what I'm trying to say is the Liberal Party correctly identifies that there's something called government waste, and then they're just superficial in the way that they engage with the issues. Though I would say that the Pirate Party does engage with these sorts of things. Because there's so many stories of like government bureaucracies in Canberra where they basically start to outsource lots of people and have more and more contractors rather than regular employed bureaucrats. And supposedly on paper this saves money, but at the end of the day they actually spend more money. And then there's the thing about robo-debt, which is a real debacle. But put aside robo-debt, there's stories.
What's robo-debt?
This was when, if you're on welfare at some time in the last few years, the government would send you a letter claiming that you owe the government money. And a lot of the time there'd be dodgy calculations behind it, which would be completely false.
No way.
But a lot of people wouldn't have the gumption, I suppose, to actually challenge that. And even though they don't really owe the government $600, they just pay them up $600 just to get rid of the nuisance.
Wow.
And in a sense, if you're still on welfare, if you've been on unemployment benefits for the last 3 or 4 years and you're still on them, then you don't have an issue, although obviously they're haranguing you to get a job. But if you got a job in the last 1 or 2 years, you're actually done the good thing of getting yourself a job, and then the government gives you this false debt for $600. You think, oh, well, stuff it, I'll just pay it. I guess I've got a job now, I'm all right, right? And that was the robo-debt thing. But put that to one side. If you're on unemployment benefits and you get paid a certain amount a week, they've outsourced the monitoring of unemployed. It used to be the CES, now it's all these private firms.
Yeah.
And those private firms get paid more to interview you for half an hour than you get paid in a week. Right? So there's something...
And that's taxpayers' dollar.
Taxpayers' dollar, that's right.
Company.
So the government has said, we're going to get rid of the CES. We're going to outsource all this job provision to private providers. We're going to save the taxpayers money. But at the end of the day, I reckon that's actually costing us more.
Yeah, because you're paying, yeah.
And so what I'm saying is the government says, look, we're going to have this war on waste. But because they're so superficial in the way they engage with the issue, they actually end up wasting more money pretending to actually engage with government waste.
To stop waste.
So what I'm trying to say is government waste is a thing. Government waste is a thing that deserves to be engaged with. And I believe the Pirate Party is engaging with the realities around government waste. But the Liberal Party really only play lip service. They use it as propaganda to try to help them win elections.
Yeah.
So the thing is, government waste is a thing. The Liberal Party are correct in saying it's a thing.
Yeah.
But the way they go about engaging with it is complete nonsense because they're just beating the drum and playing propaganda.
Yeah.
So that's sort of one issue of where I agree with the Liberal Party that there's government waste, but the way they're going about engaging with it is complete bloody balls up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot of problems we can talk about. It's currently 7:30.
Well, maybe you want me to...
I was gonna play one song or two.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get you into we're gonna talk about that poetry corner for a bit, and then we'll get you to perform something for the people.
Sounds good.
So it is 7:30. We're gonna stop maybe like 5 to 10 minutes before 8. So
sounds good.
Keep tuned in. It's 88.9. It's a good smoke. This one here is Lecrae, and it's called Confessions. I like this song because he talks about how he mingles with the millionaires and the rich people. But at the end of the day, they still have the same problems as the average person. So money doesn't really change anything. It does help. But, this was a good one for you to guys listen to if you're materialistic or if you feel like you need to get that new car, get the second-hand car. It's probably much better. This is 88.9 Radio Skid Row. Remember that number, 95509552. You've been listening to Good Smoke. It's Radio Skid Row 88.9 and you're tuned into The Good Smoke. I just want to do a big shout-out to a personal friend and a worker in the station. Great man, awesome man. He's got a show on Friday nights from 6 till 7. It's called Latin Beach Show, and it's run by Raul. And Raul he's got a mad show. He's just upbeat. The music's always up to date. Just a great guy, man. And big shout out to him. I hope everything goes well for him in the future. So, guys, if you just tuned in, it's been Good Smoke, and we're here till 8 o'clock. The number's 9550-9552. Also, radioskidrow.org if you want to know about us or support us. Go to the links and you can follow us there. Goodsmoke.com.au also. And we're in the studio today with a gentleman that he works at the station. He's a scientist, politician, and a poet, and a bunch of other things that
we're all volunteers.
Yeah.
But it depends what I mean by works at the station.
Volunteer worker, we should say, sorry. Yeah. And I'm a volunteer with you too, but it's awesome working here. I love it. Let's get into it. You go down to
Speaker's Corner.
But
that's
it's
right
near
in front of the Domain.
The Domain, yeah. If you
in
guys
front
don't,
of the art gallery.
Art gallery down in what's the park called? Domain Park, is it? Or
gosh, I go there every so often. I don't know what it's called, but the park in front of the art gallery.
Yeah, in the art gallery. So there, what happens is sometimes I go there and see it sometimes before I enter the gallery, and there's a little stepping thing that you guys step on, and they just share ideas, share poetry. It's a lot of different sort of facets. I've only seen it a handful of times, so I can't really know much about it. Can you extend on that? Can you tell us what happens down there?
Well, it's basically people talking about stuff, and it might be politics or it might be science. we've got guest speakers now. Now, Steve Maxwell, who's been on this show, on my own show, on this radio station a bit, he talks a lot about history and Australian history. You got Helmut, he's got his idea where he's saying Newton is a lot of nonsense, and he talks about God and light and science all being mixed in together. But if you want to go along to that and listen to that. And, of course, you've got Mr. Bashful, who's basically talking about a lot of things in general, but he's also talking about, being happy and resilience in life and so on. And, you do have guest speakers who just wander in, and, a woman who's after a sort of a different flag for Australia.
Okay.
And, there's a few people. It's actually listed on the website. I think is at speakerscorner.org.au. I'm not sure of the exact title, but it's pretty easy to find.
So basically it's like real basic, or the last time I seen it anyway, it was done in a park. And people just sit around or stand around and just listen to a certain person talk.
Right.
There's no entry fees or anything like that?
No entry fee. And you might have just one person speaking. Sometimes you've got 2 or 3 people speaking at different parts of the park. So you normally got Mr. Bashful running one stand, Steve Maxwell running another, and sometimes he passes control of that on to me, and maybe a third stand which might have, Helmut or some other people there.
Yeah. So you guys are just a part of it, or did you organise this, or who's the founders of this little Speakers Corner?
Well, the thing is, if you go back decades, before there was really stuff happening on Sundays, if you wanted to educate yourself, you go down to the Domain and listen to what people were saying. Now, this is before there was really radio, TV in the way that we understand it. So it was like called the People's University sort of thing. And it was just a way of engaging with the world. I mean, these days, I guess we sort of watch TV, we listen to the radio, we read the papers. But before, you had those options, and there really wasn't a lot to do on Sunday. So you go to the Domain, and lots of people would be speaking. And I guess we've sort of forgotten that there were people there, communists who'd been spouting stuff, atheists who'd be spouting stuff, conservatives, religious people, and they'd all be sort of having their go. And that's what happened decades and decades ago, and some people still continue that tradition. And so it continues on to that day, and some people have sort of run with it, as it were. As I say, Steve Maxwell and Mr. Bashful are sort of the main players, and I sporadically turn up, and a few other people do as well.
Nice. So what days can we find you, or find anyone there? This
is Sundays from 2 till 5 roughly in the Domain, but sometimes it can go past 5 if the weather's good and people are interested. But broadly speaking, 2 till 5, and some people might even start up at 1:30. It's sort of basically changing a little bit over time. People get more enthusiastic.
Yeah. And then afterwards, if you listen to something good there, afterwards you can go get something to eat in the city. It's a nice little.
There's also quite a nice cafe restaurant.
Yeah, that's right. Or you can bring a picnic there as well. There's a little grass area. Not little. It's a massive grass area where the domains happen every Christmas time. So guys, listen. We only got about 15, 20 minutes left. I got John to bring in some poems and share them. He's gonna share the history behind it a bit. Just give us a little background, get us into the theme of the thing, and then he's going to perform it. If you don't catch it now, or if you want to see it live, it'll be on YouTube later. So let's get into it. What's this one's called?
Okay, this one's called The Roar of the Crowd, and it was written by Dennis Kevins back in 1962. And Dennis Kevins was just an activist who was worried about development in Sydney and, sort of inequalities of wealth and so on. But one of the things he noticed was the amount of vigour that people put into sports. And he thought if only people would take the vigour they put into sports and put it into politically changing the world, wouldn't that be an amazing place?
Mate, this is a great choice of poem because that's actually what's happening today. So, let's get into it.
Okay, so here we go. Roar of the Crowd, a song by Dennis Kevins, 1962. I heard the roar of the wind, boys, in the mighty green shirt pines, as if the trees were blazing like a gas fire in the mines. The wind's voice kept on mounting against the midnight's face. I felt that roar well up in me. That roar has left its trace. I heard the roar at the school gates when the holidays began. When the kids raced out like brumbies, grown men turned and ran. They raced down through the playground and they roared out, "We are free!" Ah, the hungry roar of those school kids still lives inside of me. I heard the roar at the football match as it rose in the crowded stands, when a winger leapt and took a pass with magic outstretched hand, and the double roar as he came inside and flashed across the line. Ah, that was a roar that stirred my soul, a roar that was a sign. I heard the roar on the racecourse when the favourite lunged ahead, and he grabbed the lead at the ledger and the rest of the field seemed dead, and the roar for horse and jockey with numbers in the frame, and that was a roar that spurred my blood, and victory was its name. And I heard the roar of soldiers when they first went to the front, when war was only a sporting match, and they begged to go on a stunt. And they roared, "Come on Australia, Wagga, and Henty, and hey." Ah, that was the roar of the slaughterhouse, and there's nothing more to say. And I heard the roar at the town hall when the delegate rose to speak. A roar to shake the merciless, a roar to raise the weak, to raise the weak and wandering, to give eyes to the blind. That was the roar of a tidal wave that was making up its mind.
It's Radio Skid Radio .9. Just tuned in to John August performing a little poetry piece there. Who was that by again?
That was by, goodness me, The Roar of the Crowd by Dennis Kevins.
And
Dennis
when
Kevins.
was it written?
1962.
Oh, nice. And also you have another one to perform, do you?
Yeah, here we go. Now, this one's by Barcroft Boak. I don't know the exact date, but it goes back more than 100 years. And I guess this guy was thinking about, the wealthy people who used to own the stations or like country properties out there, and he wouldn't resource the people properly and they'd basically starve. And we do sort of, I think this goes back about 10 or 20 years ago of, people working on country farm properties and getting marooned there and trying to escape in a ute, and the ute sort of breaking down and then them sort of dying in the outback. So that's something that's happened, I guess, in the last 10 or 20 years. And this is sort of going back to that time again, more than 100 years ago. And I guess it's talking about that sort of nature of injustice and wealthy people in the city and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But anyway, here we go. Where the Dead Men Lie by Barcroft Boak. Out on the wastes of the Never Never, that's where the dead men lie. There where the heat waves dance forever, that's where the dead men lie. That's where the earth's loved suns are keeping endless tryst, not the west wind sweeping. Feverish pinions can wake their sleeping, out where the dead men lie. Where brown summer and death have mated, that's where the dead men lie. Loving with fiery lust unsated, that's where the dead men lie. Out where the grinning skulls bleach whitely, under the salt brush sparkling brightly, out where the wild dogs chorus nightly, that's where the dead men lie. Deep in the yellow flowing river, that's where the dead men lie. Under the banks where the shadows quiver, that's where the dead men lie. Where the platypus twists and doubles, leaving a train of tiny bubbles, rid at last of their earthly troubles, that's where the dead men lie. That's how the dead men lie. Gaunt arms stretched with a voiceless yearning, that's how the dead men lie. Off in the fragrant hush of nooning, hearing again their mothers crooning, wrapped for iron a dreamful swooning, that's how the dead men lie. Only the hand of night can free them, that's when the dead men fly. Only the frightened cattle see them, see the dead men go by. Cloven hoofs beating out one measure, bidding the stockman know no leisure, that's when the dead men take their pleasure, that's when the dead men fly. Ask too the never sleeping drover, he sees the dead pass by, hearing them call to their friends the plover, hearing the dead men cry. Seeing their faces stealing, hearing their laughter pealing, watching their grey forms wheeling, round where the cattle lie. Strangled by thirst and fierce privation, that's how the dead men die. Out on Muncie Grub's farthest station, that's how the dead men die. Hard-faced greybeards, youngsters calf-low, some mounds cared for, some left fallow, some deep down, yet others shallow, some having but the sky. Muncie Grub, as he sips his claret, looks with complacent eye down at his watch chain, 18 carat, there in his club hard by. Recks not that every link is stamped with names of the men whose limbs are cramped with, too long lying in grave mould cramped with, death where the dead men lie.
It's Radio Skid Row 88.9. The crowd's going wild.
Yeah, crowd's going wild, mate. Excellent.
That was really good, man.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. And the thing with it is, as you're listening, you can picture it as you're going through it. It's like a series of events as you're walking through.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's right. Let's just talking about poetry generally. I know there's some poetry that's all very abstract and all these strange metaphorical images, but the poetry I like the most sort of flows and tells a picture in your head that progresses as the poem goes through. And not every poem is like that, but most of the poems that I recite and I really get into have that sense of story and flow and so on.
For sure.
Yeah.
And even relatability as well. Like that's 100-year-old.
Yeah, I think that's more than 100 years. I don't have the exact date to hand.
All around.
Yeah.
So, and the other one before that was about 50, say?
Yeah, about 50 years old.
And they still hold up the relatability into this day and age. So that's the thing about poetry as well. I feel like if you were to make poetry about an area back in the day, or if you were to write like a thesis about it, I feel like the poetry would sort of entertain you more or show you more in depth than it would a thesis paper sort of thing.
Because I guess injustice and so on, it was true 50 years ago, it was true 100 years ago.
That's right. Okay, we're going to finish off. Is there any last words you want to say or about the party, anything that we have to look out for in the future, when your show is?
Okay, so my show is Tuesdays from noon till 2 p.m. The Pirate Party, I think it's www.pirateparty.org.au. So, you can also find the YouTube channel. But I think you made a bit of a posting to Facebook with some of the details. There's my website at johnaugust.com.au. So I think that you made that posting to Facebook.
That's right,
and I did sort of say, there's a story of me crashing into a car from behind and taking the opponents to court and proving it was their fault. So there's an article about that on my website.
Check that out. Yeah, and we were meant to talk a lot about a lot of other things, but obviously it got too interesting with the copyright stuff. So maybe again we'll have you in again.
Well, it's been great talking about that. And I mean, let's just say on paper you might think, copyright, intellectual property, how dull is that? But I think it's been interesting. I know.
I loved it, man. I loved it. Yeah, especially in this day and age, people that are either making a business or trying to invent something or anything like that. These things are important. You only start advocating for them when they affect you. So let's get educated.
I think, to be fair, maybe 50 or 60 years ago, there was the big record labels and the rest of us plebs, and there really wasn't much space to sort of like flex your muscles in between. But these days, we're all creators, and some creators have got money and resources behind them, and there's a lot more tension than there used to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, I enjoyed this interview. I hope you did too, John. If you want to check us out on radioskidrow.org. goodsmoke.com.au. Also check it out Facebook. You can type in Smug Goke, so it's SMOOD or MOD, one of them, and Goke, GOKE hashtag. So type that into the Facebook. You check us out there, or just type in Good Smoke and you'll find us easily.
But anyway, look, thanks very much for the opportunity. I've listened to a few of your shows, and you've certainly got some interesting people there. And I think I mentioned the tradie who was talking about how he's the old school and he makes things to last a lifetime. And he's so aware of so many tradies making shoddy stuff these days. And very interesting to hear
Thanks
that guy's
very much,
point of view.
man. And I appreciate you listening, and also be one of the people to comment on our post on Facebook. So really exciting. We're just starting out, and just to see.
I hope I won't be the only person. I feel a bit lonely. I
hope not. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been Good Smoke. This is Radio Skid Row. Check us out next week, 6 to 8. Now we have the Garner Show next start at 8 o'clock. They've got some good news and also some good music as well. So check those guys out. This has been Radio Skid Row. You're listening to Good Smoke.